Welcome to lesson 107. So today we'll be learning about lines that are parallel to a given line and finding the equation of a line when given a slope. So let's go ahead and get started. So to begin with, we will talk about finding lines that are parallel to a given line. So here they're going to give us a line, and they may give us that line visually, as we see on the right, where we see this red graphed line, or they might give it to us algebraically as an equation in maybe standardized form, maybe not standardized form for the equation of a line. Here they gave it to us in standardized form. Y equals 3/2 x minus 2. All right, we can see that this equation is represented by this line on the graph. And we can see that by just looking a little closer. We can see that the y-intercept for this equation is this number, -2, right? And if we look at the graph, where is -2? On the y-axis, it's down here. And we can see that that indeed is the y-intercept for this red line. We can also look at the slope. The slope is 3/2, which represents a rise of 3 and a run of 2. So if we go to our graph, and we could go to any point, but let's just select the point here, -2. We're going to rise 3, so 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to run 2. So we're going to move to the right 2 places, 1, 2, and indeed that puts us right on this line where we expected it to be. So we can see that again, this line is the equation or the graphed line for this equation. All right, that's all review. Now, what happens if they ask us to find another line that is parallel to this line and passes through a certain point? All right, so let's change our color here. And let's say I give you a point. And maybe that point is, and it could be really any point, but let's say that it is a -3, 4. So we have our -3 on the x-axis, 4 on the y-axis. That would put us right here. So this line is -3, or this point is -3, 4. And the goal here is to find the equation of a line that passes through this point and is parallel to the red line. All right? So obviously we need something in the form of a line. So we need a standardized line equation here. So y equals mx plus b. Okay, that's our standardized line equation, but clearly we need to solve a few things here. We need to find out what this m is and what this b is for our new line. Now, the interesting thing is, let's talk about slope. If this new line has to be parallel to the red line, then what could you tell me about the slope of our new line? Well, if you said that it had to be equal to the slope of the parallel line, you would be correct. Because think about it for a second. If I have another line here, and maybe I have this line going like this. All right, so clearly this line passes through the point that we are interested in, but it is not parallel to the red line. And we can see that quite clearly. If I extend this line along, it's going to eventually cross over the red line. And of course, parallel lines never get any closer together, and they never get any further apart. So this slope is clearly wrong. So that would be an incorrect slope. Now, what if I have a slope that's going downhill? Something that looks like this. So now we're passing through that point, but clearly the slope is way off. We're clearly not parallel with our red line. So how could we make these two lines parallel? Well, it would have to look something like this, right? It would have to look, and that's not perfect either, but it's getting closer, all right? So if you think about it, what slope on this green line would we have to incorporate in order to make it parallel to the red line? The answer is simple. It'd have to be the same slope as the slope on the red line, right? If it's the same slope, then they won't get any closer together or further apart, which means they are parallel, right? So that makes it easy. So over here, in order to find this slope, all we need to do is look at the slope over here. So this slope is 3/2, then this one must be 3/2. And we're halfway there. We have y equals 3/2 x plus b. All we need to do now is to solve for this b. So how could we do that? Any thoughts? Well, the answer is going to be, we're going to use this point that we must go through. So if we must go through this point, then that would mean that this point lives on the line, right? So if that line ends up looking something like this, well, it's got to go through that point, which means that point lives on the line, which means that that point is a solution for the equation. And if it's the solution for the equation, then I can plug those points in for the y and x here, or that point in for the y and the x, and then solve for the b to figure out what the b is. All right, so let's do that. So we'll pick a different color and we'll proceed. So the y, we're going to let the y be equal to the 4. All right. And then, of course, we have our slope, which is 3/2. And then the x is going to be the -3. So we're multiplying that by -3, and then we're adding the b. Now we have an equation in one variable, and we know how to solve this. This is old school. This is just review. So it's 4 is equal to -9/2 plus b. And then if we add the 9/2 to both sides, 9/2 is the same thing as 4.5. So 4.5 and 4 is going to be 8.5 or 8.5. These eliminate, and we're left with b. So there is our b. That is our y-intercept for our new line. So what is going to be the equation for our new line? Well, we just need to plug that b back into our standardized form. So we have y is equal to, we discovered the slope was 3/2 x, or 3/2 I should say. And then the b we now know is 8.5, a positive 8.5. So this is going to be our equation for a line that is parallel to the red line and passes through the point -3, -4. And if you wanted to kind of check that a little bit, you could start plugging this in. You could say, okay, the y-intercept is the 8.5, so that's going to put it right here on the y. And then the slope is 3/2. So if I go down 3, 1, 2, 3, and then over 2, 1, 2, that put our point right here. And we go down 3 again, 1, 2, 3, and then over another 2, 1, 2. There's another point, and that's probably enough to connect. And so now we can connect these lines, or these dots. And if I can just get that at least fairly close, we can see that we actually, and it may not look perfect in this picture, but we have a line that is indeed parallel to our red line. All right? So pretty straightforward. Why don't you go ahead and try this one and see how you do. So pause the video, try it on your own, and then we'll do it together. All right, so this one, they give us the point in which we want our new line to pass through. It's the -1, -3. Get rid of that. -1, -3. And then we have the line that we want it to be parallel to over here. Now, one thing you're going to want to note here is that this line that is parallel to, is this in standardized form? The answer is no, right? It hasn't been solved for y. So because it's not in standardized form, it's not easy to see where the slope is. So the first step is actually to put that line in standardized form. So if you didn't do that before, remember to do that next time. It makes your life a lot easier. We're just going to do it over here. So we have 4x plus 3y is equal to 7. And we're going to solve for the y to get this standard. So we have 3y is equal to 7 minus 4x. And we divide everything by a 3. We end up with y is equal to, I'm just going to write the x first so we get it in the right form, -4 thirds x plus 7 thirds. So now we have it in standardized form. And once we have it that way, we can see that the slope is this number. -4 thirds, right? So for our new line that we are trying to create here, we will just write down our formula here, y equals mx plus b. The slope has to be the same slope as our line that's parallel to it, so it's going to be the -4 thirds. So y is equal to -4 thirds x plus b. Now, we need to figure out what that b is. And the b, if I just just for the fun of it, we'll graph it over here. -1, -3 is going to be right here. So we know our line has to pass through this line. It's actually going to be going downhill because it has a negative slope. So it'll be something like this, right? Go in this direction. And it's got to pass through this point. So we can take the coordinates of that point and plug it in for our y and x. So -1 is the x. So we have -4/3 times -1 plus b. And then the y is the -3. So we plug that in for the y. Now we just have to solve this out. So if we solve it, we have a -3, and this is going to be a +4/3 plus b. We're going to subtract the 4/3 from both sides. And then, of course, these would eliminate, and we're left with just b on the right-hand side. And then if you do the math on this one, you should end up with a, let's see, it'd be 3/3, yeah, it'd be 11/3. I'll let you do the math on that. So the b is equal to 11/3. So we end up with y is equal to -4/3 x plus 11. And actually, I'm sorry, that should be a negative 11/3, which of course is going to change this to -11/3. Hopefully you saw my mistake there. Negative plus a negative is going to give me a negative. All right. So there we go. That would be the equation of the line. And if we wanted to, we could graph it over here on this graphing paper, but I'll leave that to you as an exercise if you'd like to just see what the line looks like. All right, let's move on to the next part here, and that is we're going to make it even a little bit simpler. So some of the story problems that they're going to give you are going to look like this. Find the equation of a line that passes through the point -4, 12 and has a slope of -1/2. So what's different between this one and the one that we just did previously? Well, the only difference is they didn't give us the equation of the line that we're trying to make a new line parallel to. All they gave us was the slope. So they're just saying, I want it to go through the -4 and 12, and I want it to have a slope of -1/2. So in fact, they've actually, done some of the work for us. If you think about going back to this problem, we had to take the equation and then write it in standardized form and then pull out the slope from that. Well, now they're actually making it easier for us, and they're just saying, well, we'll give you the slope. The slope is simply -1/2. So makes it easier. So let's go ahead and solve it. So we have y equals mx plus b. Plugging in the slope is very easy because they told us what it is. It's -1/2. So it's -1/2 x plus b. Now to figure out this b, all we need to do is plug in our x and y point coordinates. So we have the 12 for the y equals -1/2 x, which is a -4, plus b. And we can multiply this out. 12 equals -1/2 times a -4 is going to be a +2 plus b. We subtract the 2 from both sides, and we end up with 10 equals b. Right? Following that? So if 10 equals b, we can now plug that into our original standardized form, and we get y is equal to, because remember, we don't care about this so much. This isn't our final answer. The final answer has to be an equation of a line. So don't forget, don't just solve for the b and say, I'm done. You have to put that into a standardized equation of the line form. So y is equal to the -1/2, which was the slope that we found earlier, x, plus the b now, which is 10. Whoops, let me fix that up, which is a 10. So this then is our solution. It's the equation of the line that's going to pass through -4 and 12 and have a slope of -1/2. All right? Very good. One last problem. So why don't you go ahead and try this one on your own, and then we'll just do a quick check together, and that should complete our lesson for today. So give it a try. All right, so we know the point that we want the line to pass through. We also know its slope. So let's just write it out. We have y equals mx plus b. The slope already given to us is 8 plus b. Now we can plug in the points to find the b. So we have a negative 6 for the y equals 8 times a negative 2 for the x plus b. And now it's just a matter of solving the equation. So we have a negative 16 plus b, and then over here we have our negative 6. We add the 16 to both sides, and we end up with 10 is equal to b. Again, another b equals 10. So our final equation of the line is going to be y equals 8x plus 10. And that is our solution. All right, so I hope you found that helpful and saw that this isn't very difficult. Yeah, so we will conclude our lesson here. And good luck with the homework, and I will see you next time.